How a person views the world reflects who they are as a person. Whether we like to admit it or not, everyone has that little something that makes their skin crawl. Deeply rooted fears. Clowns, cats, thunder, whatever it may be, specific phobias are more common than you may think and can ultimately affect an individual their entire life. Around 12.5% of the US population meets the criteria for having a specific phobia at some point in their lifetime. Now, what exactly is a specific phobia? An individual diagnosed with a specific phobia experiences excessive distress and fear about a specific object or situation. Even when these individuals realize that their level of fear is irrational, some people still may go to the lengths of avoiding this stimulus altogether. Another pathway of phobia acquisition is through vicarious learning, which is where an individual's fear is passed on to someone else, and they exhibit it just the same amount. While fears can be developed through vicarious exposure, they can also be treated by exposure therapy. Exposure therapy is effective and is continuously used to develop treatment methods for different types of phobias, potentially even extreme phobias such as heights, death, flying, and more. According to a 2011 article published in Psychiatric Times, a meta-analysis of those who participated in the exposure therapy studies report positive results at post-treatment follow-up. The research question that I have attempted to answer is simply, how does early exposure to negative stimuli affect an individual's specific phobias? The simple answer, a negative stimulus can potentially develop a specific phobia in the minds of youth. However, this is not always the case. Obviously, not all kids will develop a specific phobia for every negative stimulus they are faced with. Information from the textbook states that previous research shows people are more likely to develop fears of things that don't represent much danger in their real life than towards things that are actually dangerous. One theory suggests that this is because the human brain is already predisposed with fears of objects that pose threats and are not prepared to block out the fears of irrelevant items such as berries or refrigerators. According to an article from Inc.com by Eric Mack in 2017, the top fears in America have shifted from predictable things like spiders or being buried alive to those in the top 5. The 2016 scholarly article I found entitled Inhibition of Vicariously Learned Fear in Children Using Positive Modeling and Prior Exposure describes an experiment testing 7 to 10-year-olds and their responses to vicarious fear learning. The testers predicted and concluded that immunization may be a more useful method for preventing fear development within children than early encounter conditioning because it does not rely on the presence of a positive model after the vicarious learning. These results suggested that latent inhibition prevented fear learning, and immunization led to lower fear beliefs than at the outset of the experiment, despite vicarious fear learning. The conclusions that are drawn in this source are that positive modeling can immunize children against future vicarious fear learning, as determined through the second experiment. These findings add to our understanding of fear and phobia and depicts how different individuals can experience the same traumatic vicarious learning event during childhood, but not all of them will develop a specific phobia from that event. Not only does the topic of specific fears relate directly to the children that were being studied, as fears are developed early and can be traced back to childhood memories, but this affects their parents and ultimately every person that experiences fear in their life. Fears are an obstacle faced by most, and determining how these fears are developed can help people better understand themselves and how to overcome these fears. You know that quote, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself"? Well, I say as long as your fears don't overcome you, the fun in life is breaking past these imaginary boundaries and pushing past your fears. Halloween wouldn't be such a commercial holiday if fear was a bad thing, right?